Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, everybody. This is James Pease, and happy to be presenting this webinar today. I'm going to give it another minute for everybody to get into the webinar, and then we'll get started. Okay, let's get started here. Welcome to webinar 1 of Excellence in Capital Projects. Today we're going to be sharing 3 opinions of setting up for success, how projects can go from this idea to a project framework. And this is focused on the pre-design phase of projects, so focused within the owner organization. What are some of the steps you can take to be more successful where you start in design? We'll be showing examples from healthcare, manufacturing, and heavy industry, oil and gas today. As we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. So this is a Zoom webinar today. We have a question and answer function, which you should see either at the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. It's called Q&A. We're going to try to answer the questions at the end, but please go ahead and enter your questions as we go. Sure. So make sure that you put into the actual question and answer field. If there are no questions, then we'll give you time to put some in, and then we'll also be asking for feedback at the end of the webinar. So please think of recommendations you would have as we go through parts 2, 3, and 4 in this series. Now, Excellence in Capital Projects. This is a collaboration between IT, growing operations, and their team consultation. So our speakers will introduce themselves. The goal in this overall program is to and share them across the industry so that we can take what people have developed and try it out within our own individual industry. So it's been a lot of fun actually putting this series together. I've personally learned a lot. This is the overview of the webinar series. So today on October 11th, setting up for success from business idea to project framework. And in about 2 weeks, we'll do webinar 2 and then webinar 3 in November and 4 in November. So I'm going to introduce our presenters. Very briefly, my name is James Pease, and I've spent the last 15 years working in California on healthcare projects with a very large capital program, mostly driven by seismic compliance. And the first couple of hospitals we built in the early 2000s went significantly over budget. So we've spent the last 15 years really rethinking our entire capital improvement project. And so I'll share some of my experiences today with the early phase work. Our next presenter is Charles.
Thanks, James. Charles Boyce grew up in South Africa in a company called Sasol and spent more than 38 years in the industry itself, in engineering and operations, and the last 5 years as part of a consulting partner in owner team consultation. And we focus primarily on the process industry and energy sector, and we try to get the projects set up correctly, because the essence of a successful project, as we will discuss, lies in the early phases of the project and not in the later phases. Thanks.
Thank you, Charles. Davide Gronchi speaking. Hello, everybody. Davide Gronchi. I am an Italian mechanical engineer. I've started my career in Italy in white goods sector and in automotive. I've been doing their greenfield planning, so new equipment and new factories, and also managing production. After 9 years, I moved to consultancy. I joined McKinsey & Company in Germany. There I've been, among others, one of the founders of a so-called capital productivity practice at McKinsey, which is the group that is leading the work around CapEx optimization, and especially for large capital projects. developed few frameworks. One of these is called Minimum Technical Solution that is helping to optimize the design. I've been working for many different industrial sectors. Automotive, of course, is my home turf, but also pharma, oil and gas, chemicals. And since 1 year, I've left McKinsey and funded my own advisory company out of Hamburg in Germany. Happy to be here and co-lead this workshop.
Right. Now, the question is, what is meant by setting up for success? And in the next few slides, we will be facing that and then how to set up for success. The main issue that we found in the process industry is that people jump in and start designing a project. And then there's many and thens and then rework, because people do not get the right alignment and the right traction on a project before they start. And in the next few slides, we will be discussing this type of issue and how to prevent that. The next slide is really showing that setting up for success is a mindset game and not a technical competence game. Implementing is a technical competence game and developing is a technical competence game. But setting up for success is a mindset game, and it needs to be approached as a mindset game. Any project is actually a change management process, and there are three very fundamental things required in a change management process. First of all, there must be some dissatisfaction of the current state, be that economic or environmental or inefficiencies or waste or whatever the driver is. There must be a dissatisfaction. Then there must be a clear vision of the future state. And lastly, there must be the use of an effective process. Now, the first one, dissatisfaction with the current state, is really coming from the business side. The second one, the clear and compelling vision, is also coming from the business side. And the project professional's job is to pull that out, to make sure that everybody really understand and do not work on apparent or superficial causes or visions, but real root cause analysis be done here. And the last one, the effective process, is really what the project professionals in the owner team bring to the party to make up the whole, and that is the process. Okay, so what is our aim? On the next slide, the aim is consistently good projects and not haphazard. So there are two very fundamental things required. The first is the ability to make the right decisions, and the second one, the ability to implement those decisions. And that is two different core competencies that needs to be developed in the owner team or the project owner team group. And only if you get them both right consistently in the right-hand top quadrant do you get proper projects. Okay.
So what I've found in my experience is that we'll always have a clear idea among all the different owner stakeholders of what a successful project is. So before we even roll out a process of trying towards a successful project, it's important for the owner organization to gain alignment around how success is measured. This is an example of an alignment exercise that we've used internally a lot, where we ask so in a healthcare organization, the different stakeholders would be obviously the doctors and the nurses, and then from a patient's point of view, but we also have administrators, we have housekeeping, we have facilities that need to maintain the building, we have the project management staff that needs to deliver the project on time and on budget. We have a key group that needs to maintain the systems. So this exercise pushes people to be very selfish and represent their own department and what's important for them out of the project. And then we go through with those sticky notes and we go through and organize them by columns of similar things. So every project starts, well, we want to be on budget and we want to be on time. But what's not the same about every project is the specific mission. It may be to win a design award for somebody. It may be to be very efficient operationally for another group. So the alignment exercise is about getting a common set of goals that the owner organization can agree on prior to bringing on a designer to actually put what that's going to look like together. So once that is done, there's a number of different Stategate processes. So this is check-in points. Once you've got in the owner organization to make sure that you're on track. So starting with Charles here.
Yeah, the real process that the project professional brings is the typical Stategate model. And we will see later that in the various industries, it varies quite widely. The names vary, the durations vary, the issues vary, but the principle stays the same. You have to have a Stategate process that you go through, and that at the beginning of each stage, you have to have an alignment or kickoff meeting, and at the end of each stage, you have to have some kind of value assurance to make sure that everything is done that has to be done. Now, in this Stategate model that we use, it's quite a comprehensive development model, and it is broken up into initiation or the innovation phase, where the big idea is born and people or a person brings that to the table. This opportunity needs to be framed, and we will speak about this framing a little bit later. And once it is framed, you have to then appraise that and see whether this idea that is worth pursuing. Is it the right business to be in for this specific company? And did we look wide enough for solutions? After you've made sure that all the alternatives have been looked at and it is the right business to be in, you then have to select the route that you want and then define that route properly. And each of these stages brings a new set of people to the table that start to work in the project. And every time you have to go through this exact type of alignment session that James has just been referring to in slide 13, to make sure that all of these varied groupings are aligned with what needs to be done in the next stage to come. And this is very similar to a football or a rugby game, where if everybody is not aligned properly, you see it on the scoreboard very, very quickly. Thanks, James.
Yep. Charles, could you define front-end loading in your terminology? That's not something I'm familiar with.
Okay.
That term.
In the initiation stage is really bringing the idea to the table. Then the front-end loading is developing that idea to the point where it is defined well enough, the scope is defined well enough so that you can start with execution. The big money can start to roll. So it is all the activities that need to take place to make sure that what we are going to do will be within schedule, within budget, and it will deliver the business requirements that was set in the project charter.
Great, thank you.
Then you take that and you then implement all the design required to be done to do a proper cost estimate needs to be done during this front-end loading phase, and all the design that needs to be done for the execution of the project can be done thereafter. But there's a very clear FID decision gate that says final investment decision approval is here. We know that this is what we're going to do and this is how much it will cost and this is when the plant will start up. Up to then, it is front-end loading. Thanks. The next slide.
Yeah. Are we to this one?
No, I think the slide 16. Sorry, I missed that slide on this side. Just go back. That one, yes. What I want to say here, and this is very important, because very many times people do alignment sessions and they use words and they think the other people understand that. They say, we want a pre-feasibility done or a feasibility done, or we have to do a business assessment. And they think the people on the other side understand what that means. Now you can just see on this slide, it is from the same type of industry that we work in. The many different words that is used for the same development phase of the project. Here we talk about front-end design and not front-end loading that we at OTC does, but it's the same principle that this guy used. So what we normally do is we do not use the wording per phase, but we define the deliverables and talk to the deliverables to make sure that we understand what is meant by that phase. Otherwise, you get a lot of confusion and people start off on a project doing what other people don't want. So that it is very important, especially in our industry, to make sure that people understand exactly what will be delivered when.
I find the same thing in building projects. We use terms such as schematic design, design development, and there's really no clear definition of those phases of the project. There's general understanding. We've come to the same concept you mentioned, where rather than focusing on the name of the phase, is to define what will be done and what will not be done in each phase. And in some senses, we've redefined them into criteria design, design development, and implementation documents, because we had to change the words because people were so stuck in exactly what you said. Each person has their own opinion. So by creating a new definition, then it can be defined specifically for each project. I found that to be very helpful.